Hello guys, this is a 2010 Cadillac SRX. This is a four-wheel drive and has a code P0335, a crankshaft position sensor, and I'm in the process of replacing the sensor. Now, as you can see, I actually took the front wheel off to lower the car a little bit closer to the ground to gain access. Now, I'm not going to go through a diagnostic process. I already did that. I could not find a good video how to approach this problem, because I'll show you the sensor is on the back of the engine next to the flywheel. The problem is you have a transfer case that covers the sensor itself, and there's a heat shield over that's actually bolted to the transfer case itself. So my plan is to try to gain the access to the sensor by just, if I can pull that heat shield back from the sensor and get to it, it'll be great. However, before we do that, we have to remove the rear catalytic converter. It's really messed up, and I'll get under the car to show you what I'm doing. So far what I have done, I pretty much removed the engine cover, snorkel. I removed pretty much all the hoses that I can gain access to the back of the engine. There's a hose from the brake booster. There was a hose that goes into the purge valve. I also pulled the purge valve out as well. And here's in the back, you can see this hose here is from the power steering pump. So I use a zip tie to kind of push it back closer to the engine so I can get my hands behind. Now, to get it's kind of interesting design where the exhaust manifold is kind of built into the head itself. All we have is 4 bolts that actually keep the catalytic converter to the head itself. And I'm gonna get the better light. Now, one of the things we have to do, this is the connector for a upstream oxygen sensor. So we'll have to disconnect this harness here. And now you're also going to have a harness for the purge valve as well. I didn't want to mess around. The hose for the purge valve was kind of stuck, so I didn't want to pry it off or anything. So I just removed the complete purge valve with the hose together. And the other side actually clamps here, which is much easier to get removed. Now let's get to the problem here. Now it's from the bottom. You can only look at it. It's nothing you can do. I mean, I couldn't even spray the bolts with that's how far up it is. And so anyhow, okay, there are 2 bolts there. So I think I can get my hands, and I can surely get hands on it. Yeah, I can from on this side. I think I have to spray, but I think he'll be fine. My worry is actually this side here. And it's just on the other side of the converter, and you can see there's our oxygen sensor, and so there are 2 more bolts on that side as well, so we have to get those removed. They're not rusted badly, so that's good. And I was thinking to maybe if I can get to those 2 bolts, if I remove the wheel, to get a longer ratchet. That's not possible because he just really messed up. I mean, so now I'm trying to get my hand. Okay, there's one, and there's another one. So I think I can get my hand, on the. I think I can get it down this way. I think this would be the best way to approach these 4 bolts. Socket is 15 millimeter. I'm going to use a wobble head. Socket, ratchet, and see if I can get to the first one. Tough angle. 15 for sure. This is only the top one. I don't even know how to get to the bottom one. Okay, there you go. Oh, come on. I've got this one loose. I think. Actually, I'm moving the whole stud with a nut, which is okay, no big deal. Maybe not. No, just a nut. Okay. There's the first one. So that's the top on a driver's side. Now there's one below. Sorry guys, I cannot show you exactly from the bottom. There's just no room. I'll get under the car and of course and I'll show you how all that looks like. So now, I'm trying to get one. Okay, so let's see if you can get this one done. It would be nice to spray some penetrating oil, but it's such an awkward angle. It's very tight. Get it moved. Luckily it's not too badly rusted. Now, the bottom two bolts on the flange itself are badly rusty, you know, where catalytic converter bolts to the exhaust itself. Most likely I'm just going to cut those off and drill the holes and put the bolts, new bolts in, because they're just gone. I will give it a shot if I can, you know, get it to move, but I'm not worried too much about those at all. But these are really pain. Alright, so I'm gonna get this one removed and then we go to the other side. And in the meantime, I'm gonna disconnect the oxygen sensor. Now, the bottom bolt on the driver's side came out with the stud. It's together with the stud. That's not a big deal. If this happens, don't be alarmed. Put in wise and heat it up and you know, remove the nut on the bench. Much easier. As long as it's not broken, you're fine. Now I got the oxygen sensor harness disconnected and going next to a passenger side top bolt. So I had to use one on this side for some reason. It has a kind of goofy angle on it, so if you're having a hard time to position your socket on the bolt, take it off your ratchet, put it up on the bolt, and then see if you can get a ratchet back on the bolt. I'm sorry, if you can get your ratchet back on your socket. This side, it's a little more difficult because the oxygen sensor is right next to it. It's on. And it's tight. Oh, geez. sure what the torque spec on this, but it's pretty impressive. But I'm a strong man, so I don't worry about it. Okay, so the top one is moving. Yeah. This angle is a little bit better. The engine is a little warm, not too bad. And of course, you don't want to do this. Don't do this when the engine's hot. Just let it cool down because you're going to burn yourself from head to toe. And you can see I have this cushion here. I can actually lay on it. It helps so much. You have something that you can, some kind of blanket or something to put on top of the engine so you don't get laying on all that stuff. It's pretty rough. Okay, I got the nut removed. The stud stayed in. There you go. That's the top one on the passenger side. Well, and let's see how difficult it's going to be to the bottom side, to the bottom one. Okay, luckily there's a plenty of space between the bolt and the firewall. You know, that helps. Alright, so again, slide your ratchet all the way down, keep your one hand on your bolt and guide your socket to be see, I use a longer socket on this side. Huh. Oh, this sucks. Okay, so on this bolt, the way it's angled, so your color converter is here, your socket is right in here. You got no room to put your ratchet on. You just really like this. I'm going to try to use a short extension because I should have enough room. I'm going to have a short extension to kind of get it away from the catalytic converter, but I should have enough room until I hit the firewall. It's angled like this. Okay, it's gonna be a tough one. Okay, it's kind of awkward shot, but this is what you're dealing with. This is your catalytic converter, and there's the two bolts they already removed. This is from the driver's side, and then you have I can see the stud actually that stayed. That's okay. That's not a big deal. And then the passenger side, you can see there's absolutely no room whatsoever. And see if you can kind of barely see at this very angle. This is the last bolt that was left right there. Right there. That's and it's kind of have a goofy angle on it, so I have to kind of get to that somehow. I was able to put my socket on, but because it's a kind of goofy angle, it's resting on top of the catalytic converter, so that's going to be a nightmare. So again, these two bolts, I'm not too much about that. That if I can, I'm just going to cut them off. But The crankshaft position sensor, it's right behind this heat shield here, and you can see some harness going into it. So but the problem here is that you got this big old transfer case. This whole transfer case is in the way as well, and two-wheel drives are not too big of a deal, but the four-wheel drive is really difficult. And so my plan is once I remove the catalytic converter, to kind of get that heat shield just pry to the side and get to the sensor itself. I'm finishing the last bolt. And if you don't have enough patience, just have someone do it for you, because it's no fun. Should be pretty close. So short extension and long 15 ratchet worked on this bolt. And it won't go by hand. I may actually use now 3/8. Might be a little easier. Add this short hand ratchet. See if I can get around. Now once you get it loose, I mean, you don't have to use a 1/2 inch. Just well, my camera lost memory, but anyhow, the 3/8 ratchet worked, and I got the stud removed with a nut completely, so which is okay. So I got the 2 studs that I have to put it back in, and so now we're going under the car and get those 2 bolts there bolted to the exhaust. This came out pretty easy with the impact, came right out, and I just realized I have a big problem here. I hope you guys don't have this issue. Well, this engine's been removed before, I believe, and what they did, they cut the flange from front catalytic converter and they welded this pipe. So basically this whole part is missing, this flange, and now, you know, what I should do is unbolt this flange as well, and then unbolt the exhaust here, that I can actually pull all this down and remove my catalytic converter. So right now I'm stuck. I cannot pull this exhaust down, so this really sucks. And it's mobile a little bit, but not, I mean, just a tiny bit, but not much at all. Again, this is kind of different circumstance where I don't have this flange. I mean, this should not be a big deal. Unbolt the flange here, unbolt here, and you just drop all this down with a rear catalytic converter. The front will stay in place. Now I need to figure out what I'm gonna do next. Okay. Alright, so next what I want to do, I'm gonna remove this bracket here, and I need to move this rubber piece, and these are always kind of pain. I did spray with the should spray a little bit more. There you go. This is a really good tool. And now I got this one too. See if I can finish it with this one. No, unfortunately no. Okay. So I'm gonna try to once I get this moved, okay, see how far I can pull this exhaust down. If I can get my catalytic converter moved enough to, you know, just to get to the sensor, that's all I need. If not, I may have to cut this exhaust again. Okay, I got these bolts removed. So now I got my hydraulic puller. I put this wedge in between so I can actually push this exhaust down a little bit, and you know, I was able to get my catalytic converter moved to the side a little bit, and now I can get my hand where I need to go. Now this hydraulic kit, I mean, I literally bought this for this very reason. When I get myself into the tight spot where, you know, exhaust needs to be moved, and this works so great. I mean, it's just a very nice tool. It's like it's already paid itself off. I mean, I got this used, but anyhow. So now I can get my hand. Now this heat shield is actually pretty tough. I was hoping it might be a little, you know, it may be, you know, kind of thin metal, but it's not. However, right on top of it, again, I need to get my hand over. Right on top of it here, I can feel the bolt. It's like a 10 millimeter. I need to remove that piece and see if I can push this, you know, forward a little bit, this shield, to gain access to my sensor. Now we can see a little bit better what are we after. I got my quality converter wedged up right in here. Let's put it out of the way. Now, see, there's two harnesses here. Unfortunately, the first one is actually for the NOx sensor. The crankshaft sensor is actually right around this area here. And this heat shield is wedged in between the transfer case and the block. So the only way to completely remove this would be to, I guess, take the transfer case out, which is not going to happen. So I need this metal is very tough. I was hoping it's... Now on top of it, right in here, as I mentioned, right kind of in here, you're going to have a little 10 millimeter bolt that's you have to remove, and it's this guy here. So now, I mean, the only way to do this would be just you know, I have to bend this backwards. I mean, it's really tough. This heat shield, it's not soft metal at all. So I'll have to find a way how to pry that off and gain the access to the crankshaft sensor. Okay, now changing approach and trying to access it from the top. I could not get to that bolt from the bottom. Now I have my mirror taped to my firewall. I used aluminum foil to keep it in the. So I found the angle that I can see my sensor and the bolt, and you can see this harness here. You can see as I'm moving the harness, you can. So I think that the problem is this shield is still kind of pushing this shield here. You know, I bent it as far as I could, but it's still pushing my socket away from that bolt, and I'm hoping now, since I can see it, I might be able to get to it now. The locking tab on this harness, of course, is on the other side and right next to the transfer case, so I cannot unlock this connector to pull it out to make it a little bit easier. And so let's see if I can get the socket on and you know, get this bolt removed. I'm sorry I cannot. I mean, there's no way I can have my camera and the socket and everything in place, but you see guys what I'm talking about here. And also there was a little bracket for this harness on the block. I got it unbolted, so I got this harness a little bit loose now, so I can, you know, everything is so cramped. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, we'll see if I can get it out. Alright, there's a bolt. Let's see if we can get the sensor out. Alright, I got this sucker out. I mean, it took me a good 30 minutes literally to pull it out. I mean, I was able to move it up and down, but I just could not pull it out. It was grabbing it with the pliers. You can see how much I scratched the sensor, you know, I get a right angle picks and whatnot, and finally, I mean, it was just spray with the lubricant, did all kinds of stuff, and finally it's out. Now you can see here, this is the way the sensor is locating this, and this red tab is facing the transfer case, so there's no way that you can actually disconnect the sensor before you pull it out. You just have to pull it out with the connector together. Now I have to unlock it and pull the harness off, but yeah, I mean, it's really sucks. I mean, I just cannot give you good advice how to do this. I think definitely definitely doing from the top will be the way to go. From the bottom, you cannot even see anything at all. You can only kind of, feel it with your fingers, but you can't get a good grip on it. And taping, you gotta have your mirror so you can see what you're doing. So, as I said, I used a aluminum foil to kind of secure my mirror to get a good angle on it. And I'm just gonna leave it here until I get the actual new sensor in. And now the question is, could I do this without even removing the quality converter? I don't think so, because it kind of sits right in here. So you got no room. You can barely have any room with this. But so anyhow, it's just really not the easiest thing to do. But it's one of those things. It's not rocket science. It's just really kind of annoying project. But all right, that's it. Let's check the wiring real quick. I got the key in on position. It's actually a push button. Basically what you do, you just press the button twice without pressing on the brake pedal. And now I'm gonna have different codes. Probably I'm gonna have a code for a purge valve, and because it's unplugged, I don't worry much about that right now. So anyhow, we have a 3-wire connector. We have a ground that's provided by the power control module. It's a black or 10 wire, and then signal is the middle wire, and the 5-volt reference is gray wire or purple. And so what I'm going to use is this adapter here. It's a very fine connector. Be very careful, because you can really sprung these female connectors on the harness. And so this is what I've got. And first I already have a 1 lead connected to battery ground. And so let's go to a first wire, which should be my, see here, I think it's my 5-volt ref. Again, if you don't have these adapters, I mean, it's a very fine connector. You can really damage it quick. And I'm going to connect this here. Let's see. Go to a digital meter. Let's see. Yeah, we have 5 volts. That's good. And let's go to a ground. There's going to be one on the other side. So this should have 0 volts. What we're going to do now, we got a 0 volts, but this is the unloaded circuit. So let's get the take my test light. I'm going to connect the battery positive, and so we're going to touch this wire, and it should light up, and it does. So we got a good ground on the sensor. Okay, so test light the battery positive, I'm touching, and I have a good ground. My test light is lighting up, and we have 0 volts on our meter. But this I could back probe my my test lead as I'm actually measuring the voltage with my meter, and just let's see if the signal has a bias voltage. I'm not sure if it does. It does. Great. So this is a 5-volt bias voltage, and it tells me that the signal wire is good. Let's just touch that. If I connect my test light to battery ground, I should be able to lower this voltage down to 0, meaning that it's not short to power. And there you go. So my test light is connected to battery ground here, and I can actually bring this voltage down. So that is my signal wire integrity. By luckily this one has a bias voltage of 5 volts, so everything is done. And that's it. Here's a new sensor from the dealership. It's actually $25, surprisingly cheap. I thought it's going to be much more expensive. And here's the number, and so this is the old one, and here's the new one, and it comes with the screw. It's nice, and they are matching. Everything's good. So what I'm gonna do, what I like about this one is actually the screw is nice and tight on the sensor itself. That's pretty good, actually. I like it. So I was worried how I'm gonna get this, screw back into place. So this should work. So I'm gonna take a little bit of silicone spray, just to spray a little bit. Hopefully it will go into the hole much easier. Just a little bit of silicone spray, and I will actually connect the sensor and the harness together and lock that red tab, so I don't have to worry about once I get into the because it's so, I guess you could probably even do this once you place the sensor in where it needs to be, but I don't know, I think this would be easier. And anyhow, everything is connected. Now it's another battle how to get it in a place. Again, make sure you gotta have a mirror, because without a mirror you can't do anything here. Sorry, I cannot get my camera in a shot. Maybe if I can go by feel. It was really stuck in, I mean, it took me forever to get it where it needs to go, to get it out. There you go, good. I'm in a hole. Almost. I was. Okay. Alright. Well, I think it's good. I'll get the, alright. You can see I got the sensor in, and again, this is actually nice because the bolt actually stayed with the sensor, and now I'm gonna get the socket and finish it. All right, so it's kind of again, just make sure you got yourself a mirror, because you gotta have a mirror to get this done, and just tape it back to the firewall. And it's a good example where you're trying to do something and it just doesn't work well, and I tried from the bottom, couldn't do it, and then see if there's any other options. Don't box yourself in one spot and spend all day long trying to figure out how you're going to do it. Look around to see is there any other approach you can take to get to the part that you have to remove or install. Here's a better shot of that bolt that holds the heat shield right in here, and I was able to actually pull the shield back, and since I had to bend it down a little bit to get to the sensor, to make sure that your harness is tucked in, and just finish screwing this in, and that should be done. And then the last thing will be to get the catalytic converter and exhaust back together. Okay, just again to make sure you don't have a harness pinched now at this point, because you're going to damage it. And doing this from the top, I think it's a little bit easier than try to do it from the bottom. Here's a little bracket that I see, this harness here, that's your harness from the sensor. So there's a bracket there with a 13mm bolt that I actually removed to get more slack on my harness. So make sure bolt it back to in place to the block before you get your catalytic converter installed, because this is going to get loose and it can actually touch your exhaust and cause a lot of problems. So just a little reminder, if you remove this bolt from this bracket, make sure you put it back. What I'm going to do next, again, I'm going to take my hydraulic tool to push this exhaust down so that I can get my catalytic converter, you know, in a place where it needs to go. And I mean, right now we're just putting back everything together. It shouldn't be that big of a deal. It's still those 4 bolts is going to be hard to get to it, but at least we know how to get to them, so we can finish it. Got my tool in. Don't forget your gasket for your catalytic converter. So this goes between the block and the catalytic converter. So what I did, I first set the catalytic converter to this flange to drop it down a little bit, and now I can go ahead and move it into the place and get it to my bolts, to my studs. There you go. It's already where it needs to be. And now, you know, once I remove this wedge, this exhaust is gonna go up, and now I have to do this one next. So, but just this shouldn't be a big deal now. I'm back up top again. I did not bolt my catalytic converter to exhaust. I let it kind of loose with the wedge tool still on it to push the exhaust down, and now actually my catalytic converter can actually nicely move, and I was able to thread by hand those 2 bolts on the, not on the passenger side, just on the driver's side, just by hand. I was able to get to reach it, and so I mean I can feel it now. Anyhow, so the next step will be to, you know, don't tighten the bottom of the catalytic converter to the exhaust. You need to have some play until you get those 4 bolts secure first, and then you can finish your exhaust. Just kind of common sense, you know. Hand tight everything and then finish it. One of them is kind of rusted out. So this is like 15mm, but this one is so rusted out that a 14 actually fits better. Okay. So I'm on a lower setting on my impact. I don't want to drive it over, you know, over torque it and then break these bolts. Alright, this looks good. Oh, I need to put this guy back on and then go up on the top and finish it, and then start the car. And don't forget to connect your oxygen sensor. I gotta put a little zip tie here. That looks fine. So $1 million question is, could this be done without removing catalytic converter? And that's what the set instruction said. So this is where you got to be, and you have to get this down from the top. If you get to that bolt on the heat shield, remove that and then pull that down. But I don't know, it's pretty tight with a catalytic converter in, but it could be possible. I think it's worth a shot. But this is what I've done, and I don't know, it worked. So, but it's pretty crowded in there. And alright, so the rest of it will be, so you know, I moved as many hoses as I could so I don't damage anything. So I have a purge valve to connect it, and it's here. And that hose goes around and plugs in here somewhere. And then my brake booster and you know, the main boot here. And alright, everything's buttoned up. I got my purge valve. It's this hose here, you know, sits underneath the throttle body, and then hooks up to here, and then hose from the brake booster is back in, the sensor is back in, main boot is in, goes in here. Nothing's broken, that's good. And let's clear the codes and then do the crankshaft, the relearn procedure. Okay, let's see here. set parking brake, lock drive wheel stand, the AC off, it's off. Okay, and let's see. Okay, have to wait until it warms up. It's cold right now. Okay, we are at 168, 170. That should be enough. Alright, that's it. Okay, this will finish it. I'm gonna take it for a test drive, and that's will take care of that. Could this be done without removing the catalytic converter? I don't know. It's pretty tight. I think when you remove catalytic converter, it gives you more room to work. But I would do that first. You know, try to get from the top. You cannot get anything down from the bottom. And so, you know, remove that 10mm bolt that holds the heat shield. So once you get that, then you need to kind of pry the heat shield off the block as much as you can. Now, what did help me is once I removed the catalytic converter, I was able to remove that 30mm bolt. There was a little bracket. They gave me a little bit more slack on the harness. But you cannot do that if you have a catalytic converter in the engine. So I don't know. Everything kind of looks easy when you look on the mirror, but once you start getting down, everything's awkward. So, but you know, it's doable. It's not that difficult. You just have to get a little bit more patience. And so once you remove the sensor, you can actually backprobe you could go to the PCM and look at the signal from the sensor. I honestly didn't do that because this being such an intermittent problem, it happens first was happening once a week and then maybe once or twice a day. I just went straight to the sensor, and but I did actually do a drag down test to make sure the connector is okay. I didn't see any green crusties. Everything looked okay. We verified the good ground on the sensor. We verified the 5V ref, and luckily we actually you're gonna on your middle pin you're gonna have a 5V your bias voltage, and if you don't have that, then you have a short or open in your signal wire. So you should have that 5V. And once you get that, your wiring is fine, everything's good. You gotta replace the sensor. So nothing else to it. Okay, guys, and I would recommend, you know, really if you do this, go to the dealership and get the sensors, like 25 bucks. I didn't even check the price at the local suppliers, but I don't think it's much cheaper anyway. But considering what you got to go through to get to it, I think the OEM would really make sense if you have a dealership nearby. If you don't, then you just got to do what you got to do. All right, guys, this is a quick, you know, cool project, and all is done. No check engine light anymore. So all right, see you next time. Thank you. Bye bye.